What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Triple Play YouTube channel. As always, I am your host, Kevin Coleman. And on this episode of the podcast, we have a special guest, fellow devy guy, Devy Jake, who is part of the Undroppables brand as an understudy. And as everybody knows, I have a lot of affection for the Undroppable guys. They do an incredible job. So, Jake, I appreciate you coming on. Why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you and just maybe something you've been working on, your content?
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Kevin. My name is Jacob Alley. You can find me on Twitter at DevyJake. I currently have a weekly article series at theundroppables.com called The Frost Report, where we touch on the top true freshman performances each week. Thank you for having me on. Super excited. That intro got me ready to run through a wall. Yeah, let's talk some championship games.
Yeah, and I just checked out your Frost report recently that you just wrote for Week 13. I thought it was really good. You talk about Shipley, Jalen Wright, who I think a lot of people don't know about, and definitely the kind of keep your mind on those guys. But I'm a big Shipley guy. I still believe in him, even though that Clemson offense has been less than stellar. I think that's a good way to put it.
That is a word for it. He's been the beating heart of it, at least.
Which is a slow beat, but hey, at least he's there. Yeah, and as always, I don't want to forget our affiliate. Triple Play Fantasy basically has an affiliate of Fantasy Points Media Group. They're a one-stop shop for everything: DFS, rankings, everything that you could think of. Definitely check out Fantasy Points. As always, you can use our promo code 211010. Fantasy Points, I think it's 60% off right now with 10% off of our stuff since it's end of the season. But this is a good time to jump in and see if you would like it and you'd like to pay for it next year. So as always, please check out Fantasy Points' media. All right. So what we're going to do here today is we're going to be talking about all of the conference championship previews. So we're going through everybody that knows me. I had to put my Michigan guys up because I am excited that we're finally in a conference championship. But we are going over every game. So we're going to just break down the games, go through lines, talk about what we think of the game, but also give you guys some devy relevant players to kind of go. So it's more of a catch-all for the conference championship games. And I'm excited. They start tomorrow. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go through each game. We're going to start with tomorrow's game. And so first things first is, exciting game, Western Kentucky, UTSA, which, according to a few affiliates, they thought they should be in the playoff, but then they had a bad loss to North Texas last week. This is going to be a fun game. I believe it's going to be a fun game here. Western Kentucky is actually a 2.5-point favorite over the 2022 or 22nd ranked UTSA Roadrunners. What do you think of this game?
I'm excited for this game. I'm excited to watch Bailey Zappi again.
Yes.
The Hilltoppers have won 7 in a row, and like you said, UTSA is coming off that big loss in North Texas. I think this game is actually played in the Alamo Dome, so it's in San Antonio. But I'm going with Vegas on this one. I think that the Hilltoppers are going to be too much. I don't like the Roadrunners to bounce back from their tough loss last week.
And they're a fun story, right? Like they're the group's fun story. I love those players there. I agree. I think if I was betting this game, I think Western Kentucky would be the guys just because that offense. I think that, and especially in college football, when they peak, they're peaking at the right time. They've had a great run the last 5 games. Their splits would look great. What do you think of Baylor Zappi? So you brought him up, and I know you've kind of put Heisman candidate guy in there. What do you think of him as a quarterback? He is absolutely crushing it right now. He has 4,900 yards passing, 52 touchdowns, only 9 interceptions. What do you think of him?
Yep, I love Bailey Zappi. I don't know if I love him in the pros. It's just so hard for any Group of 5 quarterback to really make a ton of headway in that regard on their senior year. But he, like I said, he's leading the nation in passing touchdowns. He's absolutely electric. I think that he has a spot as a solid backup in the league and can probably stick around on the bench for quite a few years, which is, more than most people can say.
I do like him. I mean, you can't, when you look at the numbers, that offense kind of leads to those numbers. And so I think they can be a little bit misconceiving at times, but he makes a lot of good throws, and 52 touchdowns is 52 touchdowns. When you look at what he's been able to do, I know Christian Williams, one of my co-hosts on Devy Ralph, he talks about him a lot. He likes him. But like you said, I think when you look at the percentage of quarterbacks from those non-power 5, it's just, It just doesn't bode well very well. And I mean, but I do think he can get a backup. Now, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Would you rather have Bailey Zappi or do you think Jake Hayner's better?
I'd probably rather Hayner,
Okay.
but choosing between the coaching staffs, I'd rather be in a Zach Kitley offense. He's been incredible. I think he's going to be a hot name this summer. I think there's very little chance he sticks around at Western Kentucky just because he's only 30 years old and one of the top offenses in the nation in his first year at Western Kentucky.
Yeah, he's killing it, and he's one of the reasons why I want my guy Harrison Bailey to transfer there, just so he looks better. But we won't go down that road. All right, like one of my guys I want to bring up is Jared Stearns, Western Kentucky wide receiver. He's had a hell of a year, 127 receptions, 1,500 yards, 12 touchdowns. I really like this kid. Again, these wide receivers from these different schools, I don't necessarily see an NFL future for a lot of these guys. I think we talk about them too much, and we try to find those like diamonds in the rough, but the hit rate isn't amazing on him, but he has had a great year. I do want to shout him out. I mean, he's had multiple games. He had 17 receptions against Michigan State, which is nothing to sneeze at based on Michigan State's prowess, especially what they've done in the Big Ten. 186 yards and a touchdown in that game. He had 16 receptions against UTSA in the game that they played against them. And remember, they only lost by 6 to them. It was 52-46. I expect the over on the points on this game too, whatever that may be. The UTSA does have some players. What do you think of Sincere McCormick?
I love Sincere McCormick. I was pretty high on him coming into the season. Thought he had a good shot of actually procuring some of that day 2 draft capital that dynasty players so heavily depend on. He's had over 950 yards in 3 straight seasons. His yards per carry did take a little bit of a dip this year. He's down to 4.9 compared to 5.9 last year. But I think if he tests well, he could definitely still get the draft capital needed. We've seen surprise players like A.J. Dillon and Darrington Evans get some of that draft capital, and it would not surprise me to see Sincere do the same. And who doesn't love the name Sincere McCormick? It's an NFL name right there.
You just broke my heart with Darrington Evans. Broke my heart. I had hope for Darrington Evans back in the day.
I love Darrington Evans. I did not have hope coming into the draft season for him, but I was surprised he got the draft capital he did, but happy that he did.
Well, he did, and then he has not done anything with it. But hey, whatever. Yeah. Sincere McCormick, I agree. I do think that this was a big year for him. He needed to have this year, and I don't know necessarily if he did. You're right. The testing numbers are what's going to matter because I don't see the receiving part of his game. I don't know if necessarily they utilize him in those ways, but he doesn't really have that. He showed that he can do it. I just think for a guy like him, especially in the conversation, you want to see that. And he hasn't done it. I don't know if he's banged up. He hasn't had the volume. He's gotten the volume, 19, 20 carries the last couple games. But if they're going to win this game, they got to rely on him. They're going to have to use him in that area. But I still think we are both on the Western Kentucky train, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. For sure. And
all right, we're keeping these down, so we're gonna go through here, and I'm keeping these down to make sure we're gonna keep each other honest here, and we'll see after the conference championship with this. So yeah, Western Kentucky, I believe, if you can get them at -2.5, I just checked this morning, and that's kind of where they're at. I think that's a pretty safe bet, in my opinion. All right, let's go to the Pac-12 championship, which Pac-12, it's here. Oregon versus Utah. When you're looking at your organization for Utah right now, Utah is a -3 favorite, even though they whooped the crap out of Utah whooped the crap out of them, 38-7. And when you're looking at the area here, what do you think of this game? The Ducks, they've looked okay, but they did not look good in Utah. But it's at Utah. That's a tough place to play. What do you think of this game?
Yeah, I like this as a bounce back game for the Ducks. They have won 6 of their last 7. I know that one loss was a absolute drubbing at Utah. I think it was something like 39-7 or something like that. But I do like Oregon to bounce back. I think they're the more talented roster, and I think that they're going to pull ahead. And once they have control of the game, Travis Dye can help control the clock. And I like Cam rising fine, but I don't think that he's going to lead a massive comeback through the air.
Yeah, he's not, right? So really what this game's going to come down to, in my opinion, it comes down to who can Utah establish that rushing attack and can Oregon limit their mistakes. So basically Oregon shot themselves in the foot the last game they played Utah, had turnovers, did not look great. Anthony Brown, to me personally, Anthony Brown's not a very good quarterback. He's an athlete, but he's not like that guy that can lead them there, and he definitely hurt that. I like what you talked about with Dye. If they're going to have any chance, they got to really lean on Dye. Dye's came on strong here towards the end of the season. I love Tavion Thomas. He was a big guy that I was touting before the season, and he's looked pretty solid the last. Obviously, when he's been healthy, he's looked really good there. And what is your opinion of Cam Rising? Because he's got, like you mentioned, 23 total touchdowns. He has those things. Do you think that he can lead this team to the championship?
A Pac-12 championship?
Yeah, Pac-12. No, we're not. Pac-12. We're not talking about no national title.
Right. I think he maybe can. It wouldn't shock me if they won. They're favored to win, but I think that I'm betting against Cam in this game.
Okay.
I think that Oregon's too talented and gets ahead early, and I think the negative game script kind of erases some of that efficiency that we've seen from Cam so far.
Yeah. It's the game script, right? I think when you're looking at this game and you're determining what it's going to be, it's based on if they can keep Utah on the heels and have to make them throw. I think they could win. I'm going to pick Utah in this game still because I do think they're the more physical team, and I'm hoping that Tavion Thomas can have that. I'm interested to think what you put him down on the sheet. Brant Kuth. I'm probably going to mispronounce that last name. He's tight end / hybrid wide receiver. He's small. I think he's listed at 6'2-ish, 6'3", kind of depends on where you look. What do you think about his NFL prospects?
He's been somewhat disappointing the last 2 seasons. I remember coming into last year, he was widely considered a top 3 tight end prospect at the time. He hasn't really delivered on that. And like you said, he's a little bit undersized. I don't have high hopes for him in the pros, but he's definitely someone to watch for in this game. He had his best game of the season against Oregon last time. I think 5 catches, 120 yards or something like that.
Yeah.
I like him. I just don't know how much I like him going to the pros. I have a hard time just scouting tight ends in general for the pros. And I think that NFL scouts are kind of in the same boat in that regard a lot of the time.
Yeah, you're talking to a guy that I love, Brevin Jordan. And I thought he was a clear-cut tight end 2 last year, and then he didn't get the draft capital. I know there was some health concerns there. So I understand what you say with the tight end position. Brant I think he has to come back. I don't know if he'll come out. We'll see. Because I do think he's more of a college player. But he is interesting. He's a weapon. He's versatile. I don't know about the NFL. He's going to have to move. I don't think he could play tight end in the NFL.
But I think he's like 240 pounds.
Yeah. So he's in a tweener area. Like, do you want him to play? I don't know. I just don't know if he fits. Maybe he can play in that hybrid role where he has it. I think if he does get to the NFL, it's got to be on a team that's going to use him in different ways. I don't know if it's going to be that traditional kind of set stuff. But no, I agree. And I know you mentioned Travis Dye. I like Travis Dye of what he's come out with. And like you said, I think he's the key to the game. I really do. I think they have to kind of rely on him here because we know that Oregon don't have any wide receivers. I don't know what's going on with the wide receiver position.
They have a few talented freshmen.
They do.
Haven't seen much from them.
They do. So what's your opinion of Travis Dye?
I love Dye. I think he's comes in like 10 pounds too light probably for the pros. I'd love to see him gain an extra 10 pounds or so. And maybe he has over the course of the season. I know ESPN isn't necessarily updating his weight every week or anything like that. But this is a guy, he had 40 catches this year. He kind of started playing second fiddle to Verdell. Verdell went down, and since then he's now 3rd in the conference in rushing yards. He's averaging 5.9 yards a carry. He's been killing it, and in all facets of the game. And I think he's someone I'm definitely rooting for to make a move in the pros. I think he is a senior. I think he's done after this season, but definitely rooting for the guy.
What? So you mentioned his weight, which I like. What is your baseline? 200? Is that what you like to see your running backs at?
Depending on their height, yeah, I try and do there's a pounds per inch
Yeah.
metric that I like looking at, and I think he needs to hit like 2.9 to kind of be in that not super bell cow role, but enough where he can be a primary lead back in the pros, and he's got a little bit of ways to go to hit that. Unfortunately, that's not a total death sentence, but it kind of speaks to what kind of role he'll be able to have at the next level.
I agree. And then when you look at these guys, just be careful. I mean, that running back, we might not think it means like, oh yeah, 195, he looks fine. NFL does not. They look at a certain perspective, and you've seen it based on draft capital, what we've seen. So I do think devy players too, they reach a little bit when they first start playing devy based on they hear the name. Like Devin DeChain is going to be a big one from Texas A&M because he's a smaller guy. Where do you draft him? Because he's probably going to. I saw him recently going a mock in the third round. That's way too
Yeah.
high for me in devy. I'm out. I'm out.
Absolutely agree. He's a fun player for CFF and C2C, but
Yeah.
I'll let anyone else draft him in
Yeah.
the Devy draft.
It's just not worth the risk. So on that game, I'm going Utah. So I'm probably gonna be wrong. So you better bet Oregon. Jake is going Oregon there, and we're gonna go there. Our next game, which I think is probably one of my favorite games of the weekend, and that's gonna be Oklahoma State, number 5. And they're a 5-point favorite playing Baylor. So we got Oklahoma State versus Baylor here. Exciting game. Oklahoma State won their first matchup 24-14, but it was close. And, Spencer Sanders had thrown 3 interceptions. Baylor did not look good offensively. What do we think is going to happen in this game? Because I think it's going to be close.
I like taking the favorites here. I think that OK State has been blowing teams out recently. Obviously not last week, but they still won a huge game at home against Oklahoma. They have already won the head-to-head matchup, as you said. I like OK State here.
For me, when you look at this, it's hard because you look at the favorite there. Oklahoma State has a lot riding on this game. I really think that, I don't know about you, like, obviously they need someone to lose probably. But if Cincinnati, let's say Cincinnati struggles, but they win. Like, let's say
Cincinnati wins close, maybe they're out.
And Oklahoma State wins, there's a chance Oklahoma State gets in. Like, there is a realistic, and Cincinnati fans will, all 10 of them are going to rush the NCAA final and get some people there. But Oklahoma State has a lot of ride in this game. I'm going to go with the favorite too in Oklahoma State. They're playing very good. When you watch that game, against Oklahoma, what they've been able to do defensively, this is one of the best defenses in the Big 12. But I can't believe I just said Big 12 had defenses, but he does. Oklahoma State has defense, and they look good. Baylor's got to capitalize. If they get those turnovers like they did in the end, then we're going to talk about it. But I do think Oklahoma State can finish this game. Who are some guys that you're looking at in this game that you like?
So these are, going to be similar to, Travis Dye. I think these two running backs actually have better weight and size, but still going to be like a Khalil Herbert type, someone that you hope catches on in the league, but probably isn't looking at major draft capital. And that's Abram Smith, the running back for Baylor. He only had 12 carries in his first 3 years at Baylor. And since then, this season, he's had 215 carries, 12 touchdowns, 1,300 yards, 6.5 yards per carry. He's been a monster for Baylor and really helped carry that offense. Jalen Warren's another. He's the starting running back for Oklahoma State. He's a transfer from Utah State. He's rushed for over 1,100 yards, 11 touchdowns, and actually has 20 catches to his name. So he's a little bit more utilized in the receiving game, but maybe a little less efficient between the tackles. Only has 4.8 yards per carry. Sorry, you look like you were about to say something.
No, you're good. Go ahead. Go ahead and finish.
Just one other player who I am keeping an eye on. He was injured a lot of the year. They've kind of eased him back a little bit, but he hasn't really featured like he did the first 2 weeks of the season, and that's true freshman Jaden Bray. The first 2 weeks, he basically dominated the receptions. They got him involved in punt returns. He's an electric player, and it's clear that they want to get him involved. I don't know if his health will be back to where it needs to be to display some of that in this game, but he's absolutely someone I'm keeping an eye on. And in, deeper devy drafts where there's maybe 10 rounds or something, he's someone I'm taking a flyer on.
Oh, I like that. Let's get deep in here. Now, I will say, like you mentioned, Abram Smith's a great story this season with what he's able to accomplish. I know my buddy Jeff Bell talks about him all the time, and he's the Big 12 second leading rusher, and he's going against the sixth best rushing defense. So when you're looking at this game, that's the matchup. Like, hey, can Oklahoma State stop him? If they do, it's going to be very easily. I think, and they kind of stopped him in the first matchup. He had 97 yards, only had 10 carries though. But he had 1 for 55, so they kind of clamped him in. He had one big run. So if they can stop him, I think realistically that's kind of the matchup that you're looking at. Is like, hey, can they take care of business there? I like Tyquan Thornton as well from Baylor. That's a wide receiver that I had drafted 2 years ago, expecting last year to be a breakout. That didn't happen. He came back, and he looks a lot better. 6'3", 182 kid, 55 receptions, 875 yards, 8 touchdowns. I don't necessarily know what their draft capital is going to look like for him. He kind of reminds me of Jamon Osborne from Texas A&M 2 years ago before he sat out. So it worries me because Osborne didn't really get the draft capital, but that's also because he sat out the year because of COVID. So I like his frame, what he does. He's a pretty good route runner from everything, and he has yak ability. So when you're watching him play, he does those two things well. I just don't know where the draft capital is going to be.
That's my main concern with him as well. He's a fun player, and he's definitely someone who I targeted, and I own him on at least one C2C league, like you said, a couple of years ago when he did have quite a bit of hype, and he has played admirably this year. But yeah, it's just hard to envision where that draft capital is going to come from. But he may test out really well, and we may be talking about him completely differently a couple months from now.
Yeah, maybe. I hope. I like the kid. I think he played well this year, and it's a good bounce back year for him. And they had a terrible quarterback play last year. All right, let's go to our favorite conference, the MAC. The MAC championship going on here. We got the Northern Illinois Huskies versus Kent State. So this is going to be a fun little game here. Kent State has obviously come on. They're 3.5-point favorites against this game. What do we think about this game, and who are you going with?
I am very excited for this game. This is pinnacle action. The last time these two teams met, they combined for over 1,300 yards. Kent State won 52-47, and I am praying that we get something remotely similar to that. It has the potential to be the best conference championship game, in my opinion, at least if you enjoy high-scoring affairs. I think I'm going to stick with Kent State. I think Northern Illinois thrives more on the ground and controlling the clock, and I just don't know if they're going to be able to do that against Kent State. I think their passing offense is too good. They clearly hung in there last time, but I'm still going with Kent State.
Yeah, and I think you're going to mention him anyway. Dustin Crum's playing a lot better than he did at the beginning of the year. And so when you're looking at what he's done the last 5 games, I mean, he's had almost over 300 yards the last 5 games. He had against Akron, they didn't really have to throw the ball, so he had eight completions there, 13 attempts. But in those other games, he did well. And against Northern Illinois, when you look at what he did, he had 322 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's looked very good. As long as he doesn't throw interceptions like he did against Miami, Ohio, they're going to be okay. But I agree. I think this is going to be high-scoring action. What do you think of Cephas on this team?
I love Cephas. 71 catches, over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns. I believe he's a redshirt sophomore. Really come on strong this year. I love him in C2C leagues and CFF leagues a lot. I think he's going to end up being underdrafted in both formats just because he's not necessarily, he's had the one good year. Crum's probably gone, so there'll be some questions. But I think he's talented enough that he's going to thrive for the next couple of years for the Golden Flashes.
So Northern Illinois' backfield is it's interesting. So we have basically 2 freshmen. We have Ducker and Whaley. Who do you like?
Between the two, I like Ducker, and I like, so they're both redshirt freshmen. I like Ontario Brown, the true freshman, perhaps best. He has the best yards per carry, which it's maybe a little bit more of a relevant stat when you're comparing it to fellow teammates who are running against, behind the same line against the same defenses. So he's been electric whenever he's touched the ball. I don't think all 3 of them wind up back at Northern Illinois next year. It'll be interesting to see who departs. But all 3 are talented, and they have a senior as well, Ratkovich, I think is his name. Sorry if I butchered that. And he has 11 touchdowns and 500 yards rushing as well. He's a senior, so he'll be gone. But just their entire backfield, whoever touches it is you can't take a play off on the defense.
Well, I like you brought up Antonio Brown. You like him because of his weight. I'm sure 214, right?
Yeah, exactly. He's got good size, and he's just been electric. He's every time I see a random Northern Illinois highlight, it's most of the time him breaking off a 30, 40-yard run. So I like the kid a lot.
I think Brown is more of a devy asset. Like if you're going to reach and say, "Hey, can I get this guy?" and he's valuable. Like you can get him probably pretty late. Whaley, I like, but like you said, they're both 100. Ducker and Whaley are both 185 pounds. So when you're looking at it from that perspective, if you're looking for that, and I think it's going to be kind of a crowded backfield, but we'll see. We'll see what happens with the transfer portal. If everybody notices, it's basically just
chaos,
the Wild Wild West. So there's going to be interesting to see what happens after this game. All right, yeah, I'm going to take Kent State as well. I just think they're going to score more, and Crum's been playing better, so that's where I'm going to go. But this is going to be a high-scoring affair. If you want points, you watch this game. All right, let's go to Mountain West, close to my heart as a Fresno State season ticket holder. When we're looking, we got Utah State at San Diego State in Carson, California. San Diego State is a 5-point favorite in this game. This is not going to be a very fun game, I don't think, based on watching both of these teams all year. It kind of depends on what you like. What do you think of this game?
Yeah, I am in the same boat. San Diego State's defense is way too good. Utah State has really struggled when they played good defenses. That they just got blown out 44-17 a couple weeks ago against Wyoming, and they have like a top 30 defense, so not even elite. I love Devin Tompkins for Utah State. He's definitely one of my favorite CFF players, but I don't see him or Logan Bonner being enough to get past the Aztecs defense.
So you don't like I don't want to say you don't like Devin Tompkins. That was bad. I didn't mean to say that. But there's some talk. I like Devin. I've talked about him before. I mean, I think he's leading the NCAA in receiving yards of 1,543. Do you see him having an NFL role at all? Because there's been some talk now. You see what happens right now, Jake, in draft circles. People start picking guys like we see with Tolbert. We're seeing it with Devin Tompkins. They're trying to find that one guy they can say, "See, I was first."
Called it.
Does Tompkins play a role at all? Do you think?
I don't think
he's
so.
Small.
He's small. He's 155 pounds. I think he's 5'8". Maybe if Tutu Atwell had done something this year, I'd feel more hopeful. And even then, he's coming from a Group of 5 team. He is, I believe, a senior.
Yeah.
I'm not super hopeful of his NFL prospects, but man, he's a fun player to watch. He's a touchdown any given play. Give Logan Bonner 5 seconds back there, and you see him cock his arm back, and it's getting unloaded to Devin Tompkins, and he's just a joy to watch play.
He's a joy. I do think Logan Bonner being in this game, he makes bad mistakes, and you really can't make bad mistakes against a San Diego State team that's really, really good defensively. Their offense is not good. As I've watched it, I watched the Fresno State game and those things. Greg Bell's been there, but like you pointed out, he really is not. He's okay. Like there's nothing really about Greg Bell that really stands out to me personally in terms of just production and everything you've seen there. They basically just rely on their defense, and they just. If you've never watched San Diego State, they are the most boring team in college football. It's Brady Hoke. What do you know? What do you need to know as a Michigan guy? Now, the one thing I will say, Utah State has won the last 6 road games they've played. So when we look at the last 6 games, they like that underdog status. They like that. I'm gonna pick San Diego State based on the defense. They're playing at the SoFi, so they're playing at the Ram Stadium. I think it's gonna be a cool environment for them. But I just think defensively, I think Bonner's gonna make some mistakes. I think they win that way.
I'm with you there. I think that San Diego State's defense is going to be way too much for them.
All right, we've talked way too much about the Mountain West Championship, but all right, let's go to the Sun Belt. Okay, we got to get a little Sun Belt love in here. App State versus the Raging Cajuns. As we know, the Raging Cajuns just lost their coach, but he's going to be coaching in this game, so there's something to think about there. App State's a 2.5-point favorite. What do we think of this game?
I was kind of surprised that App State is 2.5-point favorites. I believe it's in Lafayette. Yeah. So a home game for the Raging Cajuns. App State have been playing well. Chase Bryce has been playing well. I think he's had a great year. The transfer from Duke. Both teams have great running attacks. I like the two-headed monsters on both sides, Montrell Jordan and Chris Smith for the Raging Cajuns, and Nate Noel and Cameron Peoples for App State. It should be a fun game. It'll be interesting to see if Napier has them ready, or if there's early checking out and people not getting up for the game. So I think that's going to be kind of the X factor. And it feels like maybe that's what Vegas is kind of honing in on, giving App State the edge there. So I think I'm going to stick with Vegas and pick App State.
Look at you picking all the favorites. That's no fun.
Oregon. They were.
That's right. That's right. Okay. Yeah. No. So I agree. I think the question mark comes out. I think Louisiana's a better team. I just think that, are they distracted because their coach is leaving? But to his credit, he stayed. And I do think maybe there could be that rallying behind, hey, we don't blame you for taking the Florida job. He didn't have a 1-minute meeting like Brian Kelly did and ran away. So that's nice to see from your coach's perspective. I really think it comes down to Levi Lewis, the quarterback for Louisiana. He's a lot of fun to watch. If you guys haven't watched him play, he had 2,400 yards, 18 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. Rushing, he had 4 touchdowns, 226 yards. They're explosive. I do like how explosive they are, and with what they can do on the field. But Nate Noel's a kid. Again, I wish he was 200 pounds, Jake. He's 190-ish. I like Nate. I think he runs very hard, and he's a guy to really target, I believe, in C2C for next year.
I think so. He seems to have kind of separated himself from Peoples. I think Peoples is who they preferred coming into the season, and it's kind of this pendulum swung back the other way at the midway point of last year. It seemed like it was already Noel's job, and then Peoples made a late run, and now it's gone back and is Noel's again. So I like the kid. I think he's definitely talented, and let's see if he can kind of maintain his hold on the role going forward.
Yeah, and Peoples, he scored 13 touchdowns this year. I mean, they kind of use him in that kind of goal line short yardage, and he can pound. They really do a 50-50 job there. But you took App. I'm going to take Louisiana just to be a little different. And also because I do think that it's kind of like a rallying cry with their coach. I like Levis, and I think that's kind of where I'm going to go there. And shout out to Napier. I appreciate that he stayed, and he's going to finish out with his guys. That's something that I think some of these coaches should do more of, and you got to give them credit on that going forward.
Yes,
all right.
Especially doing it, we're like a week away from early signing day. So if you want to salvage some of your class at Florida, you've got this week. So definitely hats off to them for doing that, both for them and as a Florida State fan for not doing that for Florida.
Well, I forgot we had a Florida State guy on here. Unfortunately, we don't get to talk about Florida State.
Yeah, I'll have to bring you in the championship.
I'll bring you on in the offseason when we do all the devy breakdowns of teams, and you can talk about your Florida State when they have Rattler and these other guys going out there. But no, I agree. That's a good point about this early signing day. Since they moved that early signing day up, that's why a lot of these coaches have left. So you really can't blame some of these guys. If they got to go salvage these classes and go, I think I understand it. I understand it from that perspective. So let's get into the American. Big game, right? So Cincinnati's playing Houston. So they're a 10.5-point favorite. Cincinnati wins. I guess they're in. They need to definitely win I think they need to win big. And I think that we're going to have to see a game where they've had the last few games. American gives them no hope, but Houston being ranked will help at 24. What do you think of this game?
Cincinnati's really just been Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde all season. They play up to good teams. They steamrolled SMU. They have then gone around and struggled against 1-5 Tulane and come down to the final plays against other teams who have terrible records. So it's really going to depend on who shows up. I think that because they do tend to play to their opponent, and Houston is a good opponent, I think they'll get up for this one, especially I think they have the most on the line of any team. Obviously, Oklahoma State needs to win, and Michigan needs to win, and Alabama would like to win. But I think that Cincinnati doesn't just have to win; they have to win big. And the Cougs have a sneaky good defense. Clayton Toon's been playing really well. I keep going back and forth on this one. I was going to pick Cincinnati, but then you called me out on only going with the favorite. So the mind games worked. I'm going with Houston.
And Houston's 8-0 in the American, right? Like, so is Cincinnati. They're a fine team. And when you look at what Houston's been able to do this year, it's hard because the American's just not very good, right? Like, they beat SMU, which is, I guess, a good win in terms of that. It's hard to kind of rank some of these guys. They beat UConn, whoa, right? Okay, Rice.
They beat Notre Dame.
Tulane. Yeah. Oh, no. Houston, not Cincinnati. I agree. I know that they beat Notre Dame, and Cincinnati's looks very good. Like, don't get me wrong. I think Jerome Ford has looked great this season. I like Jerome. I don't know about an NFL prospect. He kind of reminds me of a better Dokes, but I do think that he's looked good. Like, you have to give him credit for what he's done there. I haven't asked you this. What's your opinion on Ritter?
I like Ritter. He seemed to be climbing back up draft boards. That seems to be the consensus on what I'm picking up. He's really picked up his accuracy the last few months as far as completion. The last month, as far as completion percentage is gone. He's throwing more interceptions right now, even though his accuracy has gone up, which is a little concerning. Over the last 4 weeks, he has thrown 4 of his 8 interceptions, but I think he's looked better throwing the ball, and I think they've looked better. They, seem like they've kind of figured it out a little bit. And, the UCF game, the SMU game, they're actually putting teams away now, and in large part because of Desmond Ritter. I like the kid. I thought that he might have had a good chance of getting, maybe not first round draft capital, but first 3 rounds draft capital. Last year, I was a little surprised he came back, and I don't think he did himself a disservice, but he, hasn't really improved on that either, really.
Yeah, I mean, some people have him pretty high. I don't necessarily have him as high as some people go. It's his accuracy. I think his accuracy has got up, but he still makes those throws sometimes that you see that I get worried about, especially when you talk about NFL accuracy. Because in my opinion, there's a difference between college football accuracy and NFL accuracy with what you have to do. You have to make tighter throws, and I think Ritter can sometimes struggle there. I know you put Alton McCaskill down. What do you think of him, young running back?
Love Alton McCaskill. He was, at least some services had him as the highest rated G5 recruit last year. He's got 17 catches as a true freshman, 17 touchdowns, and over 800 yards rushing. The Houston backfield was widely considered a competitive one, and McCaskill is supposed to be kind of a stash for future years, but he wasted no time seizing control of that backfield, and he's looked great. I love the kid.
No, when you look at what he's done, I think he has the most rushing touchdowns for a freshman, and 16 touchdowns is ridiculous. That's just ridiculous what he's been able to do there. I like him too. I think that he's an interesting prospect. But again, when I'm looking at these guys, where does Houston fall in terms of like when we're looking, hey, does it go over, obviously the G5 stuff? Can he get in the Power 5 stuff, and where's he going to be there? But he's got to have a big year next year. Like in a competitive backfield like you mentioned, he's got to have a big field there. I know Clayton June you mentioned, and I was going to talk about a little bit too. I think he's okay.
Yeah,
he's all right.
A fun guy. He's been playing really well recently,
yeah.
And he's, at least quasi-mobile. He's not a statue back there. But yeah, I don't think he has much in the way of NFL upside. One quick thing on McCaskill, I'll be kind of surprised if he doesn't at least play with the idea of the transfer portal and finding himself a bigger school to kind of show off that. I'm not 100% sure why he picked Houston the first go around, considering that he was a pretty highly rated recruit. But you've got to know that if you want to get in the league, your best bet is not going to be doing it for the Houston Cougars.
Yeah, and that's why it's funny you just said that, because before we did this, I looked up and I said I put in an Alton McCaskill transfer portal just to see if I could see any news or anything like that. Like, was he thinking about it? Because I agree. I do think that if he really wants to go somewhere, he might need to go and kind of get some better anywhere. And Oklahoma could be an option. We're looking at other guys that we could see maybe that need that running back. I'm not a big Eric Gray guy, but the other guy I want to talk about is this guy is going to be right in the Fantasy Pros Primer tomorrow for me for the devy Primer. Nathaniel Dell. Houston wide receiver. He's looked pretty good this season. 71 receptions, 1,000 yards. He's a small guy too, though. So he's a sophomore, though. He's a guy that I wouldn't mind targeting in my drafts next year for C2C. If you have startup drafts there, I think he's pretty good. Him and Clayton seem to have a good connection there. But again, he's small, so he's more of a C2C asset than a devy asset.
Agreed, 100%. Nathaniel Dill is awesome. Electric, threat to score from anywhere. And yeah, sadly, probably caps out at that. We won't see him on Sunday.
He caps out of that. Yeah, it happens, and that's why. But that's why I do like playing. If you're not in a C2C league, I have much more fun in C2C leagues than I do in devy leagues, just because I get to play fantasy and college side.
Yeah, you get to use your players. What's the fun in just having these guys that are killing it and then just don't get drafted, and you're like, well, that was a waste.
Yeah, I think it's fun because if you're out, especially if you're out on defense or on the NFL side, and you're like, hey, well, at least you still can play for that NCAA championship. So I agree there. All right, let's go to the big dog, SEC championship game. We got Georgia, Alabama. I had to put up the helmets for this one. Georgia minus 6.5. Everybody's picking Georgia here, Jake. Are you?
If Alabama had looked better against Auburn, I would feel much, much better picking Alabama, but they really didn't. I was hoping that Bryce Young would be playing essentially for a Heisman this weekend, and I think if he has, the best game that anyone's had against Georgia all season, he might be right back up in the discussion. But even though he threw for 350 yards and 2 touchdowns last week, it took him 50 passes to do so, and he completed under half of them. So I'm not sure if he's fallen off a little too much to be out of the Heisman contention. As for the game itself, I mean, you can't say enough good things about Georgia's defense. This will be the best offense they've faced, but I don't think that Alabama's just in the right form right now. That game, maybe they were looking ahead to Georgia last week, but it did not look good and does not instill me with confidence. I'm going with the favorites. I'm going with Georgia.
That defense is so good, and there's a matchup I'm looking at is Alabama linebackers Will Anderson Jr. versus that offensive line of Georgia. Georgia lost their left tackle, his senior Jamari Salyer, like four games ago. So they have freshman Broderick Jones playing there. He's been pretty good as a fill-in, but this is the SEC championship game. And when you're looking at what you're looking in terms of hey, can you stop these guys? I do think that offensive line versus Alabama's defense is where the key is going to be. On the flip side, I love Brian Robinson Jr. He's had a very good season this year. Alabama has nothing behind him. They're so decimated at running back, and they're after JoJo Earl towards ACL and had all that stuff happen at the wide receiver position, they're decimated because for some reason Ajayi Hall is just, I don't know. Maybe he's going to have a breakout game today. Maybe for some reason they'll give him that. I don't think Corey Brooks has played well. It comes back to do you trust Kirby Smart? And, there's something about Kirby in big games, especially with Saban being on the other sideline. Kirby has to win this game, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think they can afford not to if they want to keep on this, keep all this momentum going and be ready for the playoffs. So, yeah, I think they have to win it.
And he just has to, and there's something to say, last game against Auburn. I love Harskin. He's a good coach, and Brian, and someone that I really talked about with Boise State. Seeing Nick Saban on that other sideline, though, it does something to these coaches. There's something to say about how good he is and what he does over there. Kirby really needs to win this game. I do think Bryce could win the Heisman if he has a huge game and they win this game, or if it's maybe really close, because I don't really think there is really a Heisman this year, to be honest. There's not really that guy. I think Aiden Hutchinson should get a shot. I think some of these defensive players maybe should get invited. But if Bryce could win this game, I think he wins it. I love Bryce. I think he's very good. It's just, can he be that guy in this? Bill O'Brien's been terrible play caller. If you've watched what he's been able to do, I don't know what he's doing out there. I think if Bryce wins this game, he goes at it, right? And he goes there. I know you wanted to mention some Georgia players. Why don't you mention some of your favorites?
Easily Brock Bowers. He's a true freshman tight end. Super athletic. It might be a little light where he's kind of playing that tweener role, but leads the team in touchdowns, leads the team in catches, leads the team in yards. He's got a third of their touchdowns, over 20% of their yards. And this is a true freshman, and this is at Georgia. Everyone wants to be like, oh, Devontae Smith shouldn't have had to produce early on because of how loaded those Alabama wide receiver rooms are. This is a wide receiver room and tight end room that is, they haven't lived up to the billing, but it's still stocked to the brim with 4-star talent. And the fact that he's come in right away and just absolutely stolen the show is nothing short of incredible. I love Brock Bowers, easily tight end 2 overall already. 10 games, 11 games into his career. You can't say enough good things about him.
I like Brock. Hey, Napa kid out here in California. I was on him a little earlier just because I knew he was from California. I like to give devy Dietz Austin a lot of shit because he told me that he wasn't good, and I said over the summer he is good, and then so now it's a running joke every time he does anything. I text him and say, "Hey, look at Bowers, he did something there." But I agree. I do think that he's looked good there. The running back room in Georgia. You mentioned a lot of those guys. I like James Cook. I actually like Cook a little bit more. Zamir is going to be fine. I think he's a good inside the running back, inside the tackles. He does a good job there. He's going to score touchdowns. You said I think 2 to 3 make the pros. Who's it going to be? Who do you think?
I think Zamir ends up being on the outside looking in. He's got the 2 or is it 3 now torn ACLs.
I think it's 3.
He hasn't been able to run away with it. I know it's a talented running back room, but I think James Cook actually surprises some people and gets a 6th round. Here's his name called in the 6th round, and we'll see next year what Milton can do with more of the brunt of the work. I still have hope for him. He's a supremely talented kid. Just hasn't really seemed to get the opportunity yet. They do have, Branson Robinson coming in, so he's, insanely talented in his own right. So we'll see if Milton, who's 2 years older, can at least hold him off and earn some of those carries.
Yeah, Milton's a kid out here from Fresno that I really like, and I think he's done. He's someone that he has to hold off Branson Robinson. Branson Robinson looks like he's 85 years old already. He's out here just looking amazing. But I like Cook. I like that idea. I think Cook is that sleeper that we've all been looking for, and I do think that he's looked well. And like you said, I think that's the sleep guy. On the other side for Alabama, I tweeted out, I don't know, a few months ago, I said Jameson Williams might be the most important transfer over last season, and he's looked great. I mean, he almost lost me my C2C championship because he got kicked out of a game, but I luckily held on, so I still love you, Jameson. But 1,200 yards, 13 touchdowns, like you mentioned. Him and Mechie, I think he's better than Mechie. I'm not really a Mechie guy. Are you a Mechie guy?
I like Mechie. I think he maybe gets the bum end of the stick. I think he still had 90 catches this year. He still had 1,000 yards. He still had 7 touchdowns. He's been insanely productive both last year and this year. I'm not sure how he's going to test out, but he has fine size. I like the kid.
Yeah, no, I think the testing for me is going to be matter. Where does that go there? I like Jameson, but Jameson's going to have to be that. Where does he go? I have a spot for him. I want him to go to the Chargers and take the Mike Williams role.
That would be awesome.
That's kind of my hey, that's the guy I want to go there. And in terms of the game pick, I know Jake picked Georgia. I'm going to take Alabama still just because I don't trust Kirby. And if he wins, good for him. But I don't trust Kirby. I think that Bryce could win the Heisman here. I'm really high on Bryce. And if he does this against this defense, now we're talking about. And realistically, this is the best offense Georgia's faced too this year. And when we mention it, like Georgia's won some games, yes. But Clemson, what we found, Clemson is not Clemson. No. They won 10-3. They're not there. Arkansas has not looked great. Auburn, yeah, they won. They did look better than Alabama against that. Kentucky, Florida was bound. Missouri was whatever. Tennessee, a little better offense there. Georgia Tech, as we've seen, is just bad. So, this is the real game here. This is going to be a shock, and it's going to be – I think it comes down to a couple series. But give me Alabama as the underdog in this game, which is hard. I can't believe I just said Alabama as an underdog. I haven't said that in a long, long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's go to the ACC. We'll wrap up here with ACC and the Big Ten. But ACC first, we got Pitt and Wake Forest. As you can see, no Clemson there. Pitt is a -3.5 favorite against Wake. What do we think about this game?
Yeah. So, like you said, no Clemson, no Florida State. It's the first time in like 10 plus years that we haven't had one of them represented from our division. I think Wake was actually the last team to go that was not Clemson or Florida State. Both have turned out to be great offenses. I love the emergence of both Pickett and of Sam Hartman. I'm excited for this game. I think it'll be a fun one. I'm going to pick Wake to go with the underdog here. Um, I, it could go either way, though. I would not be surprised, and I think Pickett really needs this game. Just to end the season. I know he'll still have the bowl game, but end that season on a high note where everyone's watching them. One last chance to dazzle some scouts.
Yeah, I'm going to get to pick it real quick, but I do want to, as a FSU, how are you feeling right now? Are you okay?
I'm the happiest I've ever been with a 5-win team. I'll leave it at
Okay.
that. We're I think turning it around. I think we're going to be a hot transfer portal destination this year. I love Travis Hunter, the number one prospect according to 247 coming in is committed to the Knowles, and he's got a hell of a personality. He's already one of my favorite Seminoles like ever, and has not even stepped on campus yet. So I'm optimistic about the things to come. I've come out the other side after the 40 to whatever drubbings against Syracuse and whoever else. It's nice to have a team that looks like they can play football. It's been a great last 7 games, I would say.
Do you believe in Norvell?
Oh, absolutely. I'm surprised
Okay.
that we haven't been talk of him, getting poached off of us with all these big name openings. I expected him or at least some of our staff to have been poached already.
Yeah, I believe in him. I think they're going to get that rushing attack figured out. People forget, like, as much as we talk about all these guys in that program at Florida State, there were some things they had to fix there, and so like it is weird not seeing Florida State or Clemson in this game, but it's good for other people to get in there. I think I'm going to go Pitt, and just because of Pickett and Addison, they've looked very good in that offense. I do think that sometimes play calling can be a little different with Pittsburgh. I've watched him a little bit just because I've had Jordan Addison on my CTC squad. I have him everywhere. I drafted him last year, and he's looked great. What do you think about that connection? So, a couple questions. Pickett, do you believe in him as being a first round pick? And then Addison, where do you have him ranked in your rankings?
So Pickett, do I think he will get first round draft capital? Yes, I think that's mostly because there are a lot of needy QB needy teams in the NFL right now. I could probably rattle off about 10 or so teams that
Yeah.
could use an injection in that area. But do I think he's worth that pick? Probably not. He's an older guy. He's looked good, but he hasn't looked good his whole career. He just really has come on strong this year. He had a good year last year, but not close to what he's done this year. This year he's got 40 touchdowns, 4,000 yards. He's had 5 games with 4 or more touchdown passes. He's been incredible. Jordan Addison, absolutely the same. In his last 2 games, he's got 25 catches, 6 touchdowns, and 280 yards over 2 games. I mean, it's video game numbers right there. I have Addison in his class at the wide receiver 3, just behind Boutte and JSN.
Okay.
But I do like Addison over Quentin Johnston and Josh Downs, who both are really good in their own rights.
Okay, yeah, no, I like Addison. What he's been able to do. I mean, his usage is through the roof. There's a reason why he gets all those throws. What he's been able to do. I mean, I saw him on one of the drives last week when I was watching. He got like 7 straight balls thrown to him, just boom, quick, fast action, and that's what you like to see out of Addison. I agree about the Pickett. I'm not the Pickett guy that everybody else is here. I think he's gonna get drafted at first based on need, but I don't see him being there. I think an interesting case is who would you rather have, is Ritter or Pickett? To me, when I'm looking at that scenario, I'd probably rather have Ritter because I think he's more athletic, has different tools than probably Pickett does. I think the ceiling on Pickett's a little lower. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think as a fantasy player, I definitely want want Ritter. I think he's
Yeah.
a lot more likely to get production on the ground during his first few years, whereas while he's struggling through the air. Whereas who knows what that's going to look like for Pickett. I feel like Ritter for some reason reminds me of Dak Prescott. I mean, he's maybe a worse passer, but I don't think Dak Prescott was that hyped as a great passer coming out of Mississippi State, and they just kind of have similar games to me. I forced to choose between the two as an NFL team. I would probably go Pickett just because I don't think I'm as concerned about the rushing production that he gives. That would be missing, and I think that Pickett can kind of he's going to have less of a learning curve, and coaches aren't necessarily planning out 5 years in advance because they know their job probably isn't going to be secure for 5 years. So you kind of want someone who's going to come in and be able to pick up an offense right away and not be terrible.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's fair there. I'm gonna go Pitt in this game, just because, like I said, Addison, those guys there. I think that Pickett can be there. Hartman's played well. I know you mentioned him. A.T. Perry, those guys have looked good. But we want to move on to the last game, which is the most important game, and that's the one I want to talk about. And that is Iowa and Michigan. Michigan's a 10.5-point favorite. To say that I'm not nervous about this game would be a lie. I am very nervous about this game because Michigan has let me down so many times in my life the last 32 years that I don't want to be that guy that just jumps ahead and says they're going to win. What do you think before I kind of give my opinion on this game?
I hate to jinx you here, but yeah, I think you guys are going to win. I think you guys are going to win easily. You guys looked very convincing against Ohio State, which was surprising to me. And I think that Iowa's been a little overrated at times. I don't think they've really faced many offenses as good as Michigan's. And yeah, I think Michigan's going to stomp them personally.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, they should, right? Like in reality, like with Spencer Petras at quarterback, if we lose to Spencer Petras, we don't deserve to be in the college football playoff. And that's the reality of it. The only thing I could think of is Michigan. They used a lot of energy and they used a lot of emotional energy last game. Will they be up for this game? I think they can because they want to go to the playoff because that's something that they want and that's there. So I do see that. I just worry about that. That's the biggest thing I worry about is the emotional part of this. But I do think, and with college kids, that's definitely there. Devy relevant guys, I love the running backs from Michigan. Obviously, we're not going to talk about probably any quarterbacks in this. JJ McCarthy's not there yet because he's not.
He hasn't started yet. McCarthy. Yeah, he's looked good in flashes. He's looked really good.
He has, and in my opinion, he should be starting. Even though we won last, whatever. I think JJ gives us the best chance. I like JJ a lot. I actually comped him to like a young Matthew Stafford. And before the season, I really like his arm talent. I like his ability to kind of do that. I think he's a little bit more rushing upside there. I love Haskins, Corum, and Edwards, though. I think those three guys are very good there. Do you think Haskins has a shot maybe getting up that draft capital and like pushing up the boards next year?
I think he has a shot. I think he's still going to fall in that, he's more productive and probably better than Khalil Herbert and Kylan Hill and players like that. But I kind of envision him getting, drafted in the 5th round or something like that. He'd have to test pretty well, which I don't necessarily see happening for me to move him up much higher in my ranks. I think Corum is the best running back you guys have. He's been hurt lately, which has kind of given Haskins that opportunity to really shine. But even last week against Ohio State, he had only 6 carries, but I think 80 something yards, 87 yards or something like that. I really like Corum. I have him in the top 6 in his class, and I love Edwards too, and I love that they've found ways to get him involved, even with 2, supremely talented players in front of him. He had that game with 10 catches and 150 or 170 yards. So I love that they've been able to keep getting him involved, and I'm extremely, extremely bullish on the Michigan backfield.
Yeah, I think that backfield's legit, and there's nothing else there. I think Aiden Hutchinson for the DN is going to put a lot of pressure on there. I think our defense can be good there. I like Blake Corum, and like you said, Edwards is good. Like a lot of people are fading Edwards because he went to Michigan. That was like the common thing that we heard, which I understand. I get it, but use them in that receiving game helps. I think that really does, and I think that shows that he can do that, which we've seen. Is there anybody on Iowa that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I like so Sam Laporta was supposed to be the next big tight end to come out of Iowa, the school that produced Vance and Kittle and countless others. But he hasn't really lived up to the billing for me. He does lead the team in catches, he does lead the team in yards, but I still want to see more from him. I think he's a little undersized. One player that I do really like, and I'm going to be drafting in countless C2C leagues, and I think he has legit NFL upside, is Keegan Johnson. If you watched Iowa play, he's made big plays all over the field. I think he had a big one against Penn State in the fourth quarter, just coming through in the clutch. He's their second leading receiver as far as yards. He's got good size. He's a blue chip recruit. I like Keegan Johnson a lot.
Yeah, I think that's a good call, especially for what they want from him, and what they're able to do with him there too. I think that he can be good. They're bringing us some running backs next year too. I think the reality though is Iowa just doesn't have a quarterback. I don't even remember the last time Iowa had a quarterback because Petrus is not very good. Like this should be Michigan's game easily. We shouldn't have to talk about that in terms of there. I do think they can cover. I'm going to take Michigan as well, just because I think that if they lose this game, you will never see me again, Jake. That's just kind of how that works. Like this is supposed to be their game, right? And in reality, with what they did to Ohio State with that offense, everything they looked amazing. So that's kind of how I feel there. So we just went through every kind of conference championship game. We had a lot of fun with it, going through guys that you should look at, game picks. Like I said, we kept down the game picks. We'll be sending those out to everybody. You can check us out on the YouTube channel. Why don't you tell everybody again where they can find you, but also if you have any content coming out or anything on the horizon, maybe some off-season moves, if you have you got there yet.
Yeah. So again, you can find me at devy Jake on Twitter. I do have a number of articles in the pipeline, including one where we're going to go through the top 15 or so players who are probably available in your devy league. So the typical top 15 or 20 devy players that you see in a given article isn't necessarily helpful once you've already done your startup draft because they're already owned. So I'm going through and looking in my leagues for who's unowned and in at least half of them and shouldn't be. The Wan'Dale Robinsons, even the Matt Corrals, and things like that. So that's coming out soon, and that'll be a lot of fun. Otherwise, I plan on doing something with, a transfer portal roundup and maybe a coaching carousel roundup when we get a little bit deeper into the off season. But thank you so much for having me. It was truly a pleasure. And I had a lot of fun.
Hey, man. Yeah, no, hey, you know what you're doing. You're up and coming. I appreciate everything you have. You definitely follow him. He's definitely an underfollowed account on social media, but all the work that they do over there. If you're going to do a transfer portal article, that thing's going to be like 5 pages. You might have to split that up into like different sections there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was thinking like a 5-parter.
Yeah, 5-part transfer portal. So as always, we appreciate you. We just over 1,300 subscribers here on the channel. We appreciate that as well. Hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Until next time, we'll see you guys later.